So, Assalamu alaikum to everyone once again. You're joining us today on the fourth day of our AMSA's Fresher Week. Today, inshallah, we're going to be discussing the different contemporary issues, particularly pertaining to students, and inshallah, how we can tackle these issues as well. So, joining us today, we have respected Mansoor Clarke Sahab and Sabah Ahmedi Sahab. Both are serving as missionaries in the Ahmedi Jamaat, and they're also serving in the press office, press and media office as well. Assalamu alaikum to you both. We're also joined by Luqman Bajwa Sahab today as well, who is the Murabbian. So he's also going to be, answering any questions pertaining to student affairs in particular. Assalamu alaikum, Luqman Sahab.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Okay, Jazakallah. So with that all done, I think we should just jump straight into the Q&A. So if you have any questions, please do send them in to myself. You can just message me in the Zoom chat. But just to start, the first topic I'd actually like to touch upon actually relates to kind of socializing outside of university. And in particular, I just wanted to talk about, this culture that we have in the West of, drinking alcohol and going to parties and gambling. So these three kind of make up a big part of the social life in Western universities in particular. And as students, we see many of our friends partaking in this, and they ask us to partake in it as well. So Mansoor Sahab, I know you've been to university, and you've probably experienced this as well. So how can we overcome these issues, and what advice would you give to us? What are the dangers associated with these things?
I think first and foremost, what we have to understand is that when we call it Western culture, it's not necessarily Western culture. What it is a feeling of not belonging anywhere, which exists all around the world in people of all different cultures. So if you go to Russia, if you go to Pakistan, if you go to India, if you come here to the UK, or if you go somewhere in Europe or in the US, wherever you go, you will find groups of individuals who feel that they don't belong. And then with that, they feel that they need to do certain actions or behave in a certain way in order to become one of the crowd, as it were, to get along in life and in society. And one of the things that people are always worried about, especially when they go to places of education, when they're leaving their comfort zones of home, is getting along with other people and not sticking out for the wrong reasons. And as such, a lot of people fall victim to peer pressure. Not peer pressure in the fact that someone's standing over you saying, you should definitely do this. And then you think, okay, fair enough, I'll do it. But more because you feel the need to conform to what's already around you. And what actually you'll find is that everyone is just putting on this act to try to make other people happy. And you won't ever find, for example, and the way I can prove this, right, is you won't find really high successful people who, not about success just in terms of money, I'm talking about those people that are happy in their lives and those people that have achieved the things they want to achieve, spending all their time gambling and drinking alcohol and sitting at parties. You find those people having set themselves goals and then working hard to achieve them. And I think what we need to understand is that when we normalize this kind of behavior, saying we're in the West, so obviously this kind of culture is something which we're all going to have to deal with, we kind of legitimize that culture. Whereas in actual fact, if you speak to quote unquote Western families, or those people, say for example here in England, good, well-to-do families, they always have these kind of rules in place which also curb this kind of behavior. So going to house parties and getting drunk on the street and doing drugs or going gambling isn't seen as a very positive and brilliant thing to do in Western culture. So I think the first thing we need to do is take away that justification by saying that it is a culture, because it's not a culture. It is a culture for a group of individuals who feel that this is the best way for them to socialize and make friends. So obviously at this stage, then you have the question as to, okay, but it still happens, and how can we deal with that? And I think the way that we'll deal with it is by understanding, of course, there's like a philosophical thing behind it about understanding your purpose, but in a real sense, by understanding that the things that you do in your day-to-day life will one day come around to bite you, and that you will form your character based on the decisions that you're making today. So it may not seem like it today, but whatever you do today, in 10 years' time, even you yourself will have an opinion on it, and let alone the people around you. So I know we're going to be speaking a lot more in detail about this, and I'm eager to hear Sabah Sahib's view on this as well. But I think it's an important one, that we surround ourselves with the people that make us better. This is something common in all these like self-improvement books. Surround yourselves with the books of the people that make you better. Surround yourselves with the sohbat and the companionship of people that make you better. Surround yourself with the people who you want to be like in 5 years' time. And if you want to be somebody who wastes their life away on things like gambling and alcohol and spending time in parties where you're spending the whole night there or the day there and there's nothing that's come of it in the next day, then that's down to you. But if you want to excel yourselves in things like academia or spirituality or personal skills, then surround yourselves with those people, because you're not going to be finding them sitting at a party at the bottle of a bottle of alcohol. Those are the things I can say, but I definitely want to hear Sabah Sahib's point of view on that as well.
I think Mansoor's answered it really well. Just looking at it from a situation which you're put in where alcohol might be there. So there'll be times where you go out with your friends for dinner, or you're going out just to socialize or whatever, and you go to a restaurant and one of your friends orders an alcoholic drink. And that happens because not all of your friends might be Muslim. And it's knowing that, okay, I can't order an alcoholic drink. I can order a Coke or orange juice or whatever, and then spend as much time as you can with them until you realize yourself that, look, you know what, from this point onwards, I know that they're getting a bit drunk, or it's not becoming an environment where I want to be in. So it's a lot about knowing your own boundaries and your own levels of what you'll go to, and then taking yourself out of that situation when the time's right. And it's just about understanding when that time is right to leave, so you don't get absorbed and tempted into a situation where you also want to start drinking. So do attend dinners and social gatherings with your friends, of course, in reason, but then obviously having alcohol is the cut-off point, and saying, no, look, I can't do this, and then taking yourself out of that situation when it becomes un-Islamic.
I think that's the key point, isn't it? I mean, it's not about Islam's not about removing yourself from life and not engaging in society, not engaging with friends, not going to play sports, not having fun. It's not about that. It's about knowing where the boundaries are. And that's what life's about. Life's about enjoying life to the max, but knowing when to stop. And I know this sounds like something that parents would say. I've got like 3 kids of my own. So I'm always saying, look, you need to know when to stop. But that's the reality of life, that enjoy your life to the full, within the boundaries, within what you know you're allowed to do. Enjoy it to the full. What people don't do, and often people will see who have these kind of lives that are revolving around gambling or revolving around alcohol consumption or drug consumption. What we see is that actually the rest of their life is not fulfilling at all. They don't have those meaningful connections with other people. They can't sit down and have those meaningful discussions with other people. And that unfulfillment in that part of their lives leads them to try to discover ways of making friends which aren't meaningful, which is often through mutual consumption of drugs or mutual consumption of alcohol, or let's go to a party together, or let's do this and let's do that. And it's those meaningless connections that we try to form because of ultimately the lack of meaningful connections that we can have, obviously with God, but with our parents, with our siblings, with our close friends who make us better people. So I think it's really important that if you want to be a better person and you want to safeguard yourselves against these kind of things, then ultimately what we're taught in Islam is sohbat salihin, that keeping friends with the righteous. And that doesn't just mean, of course, the best friend is God, and of course, Hazur is there, but it's keeping friends with people that can make you a better person. I'm not talking about just saints. I'm talking about general good people that give you a laugh, you can have friends with, you can have fun with, but they keep you on the right track. And that ultimately is what good friends do.
So, do you know, I went to college. It's an anecdote. I went to college, and a lot of my friends, they used to drink. And they used to ask me, "Oh, why don't you drink?" Well, why don't you do that? I said, "Look, my faith doesn't allow me to drink. It says that consuming alcohol or any substance which can cause intoxication is not allowed in Islam because you're not aware or you're not in control of your senses." And when I actually told them, "Look, I don't drink alcohol," they said, "You know, we actually really respect you for that. We respect the fact that you're respecting your faith and your religion." So that's one point. And the second point is, in the same breath, you can't tell anybody else what they can and can't do. In the Holy Quran, it says, for you, your religion, and for me, my religion. So if your friends want to go out on club and go clubbing and go partying and drink alcohol and get drunk, that's their life. But you as an individual should use your own example and say, look, I don't do X, Y, and Z, but I do this, this, this instead. And it's you, through your own example, is a form of silent tabligh. And through your own example, you're able to show people, or you'd hope and pray that you're able to show people what the true Islam really is.
Jazakallah, that was a very interesting answer from both of you. And especially that anecdote, I think quite a few people could probably relate to that, where they've stood up for themselves and kind of stood up for their faith and showed people that they have certain boundaries and that they're not allowed to cross them. Just talking more about boundaries, I just wanted to touch upon the issue of barda next, and the segregation of sexes. So obviously this is promoted by the teaching of Islam, but over here, you know, when we're studying, it's quite easy to get involved, you know, especially through our education and socially as well. You know, we have to talk to members of the opposite gender. So how should we, where do our boundaries lie?
You can say girls and women. It's not haram to say girls and women.
Yeah, so talking to girls and women, but then also for girls talking to boys and men as well. So yeah, so from an educational and a social point of view, where do our boundaries lie and how should we establish these boundaries?
Somebody want to take it first?
Mansoor, you or my senior? I'll go off you.
This guy. So look, the thing is, it's hard for you to set a boundary and make a blanket statement anywhere because every situation is slightly different. But there are certain guiding principles which should always be kept in mind when making those decisions. So ultimately, the thing that always kind of should guide you is this right or wrong? And I know people turn around and they say, do you know what? I just can't tell. I can't tell if it's right or wrong. But I mean, the hadith says otherwise. The hadith says, when you're doing something wrong, your heart knocks. So inside, it doesn't matter how small that voice is, but inside, somewhere deep in your heart, you'll feel that, is this right or is this wrong? And the way that the maximum kind of way of describing that is, would you be okay with, at minimum, your mum knowing what you're doing? And at maximum, would you be okay with Hazur knowing what you're doing? So if that action of yours was to be put in front of Hazur, and Hazur was to question you on it, would you be able to justify easily with a light heart? Because in many situations, you would be able to. Say, for example, if you're in school or in uni or at work, and one of your colleagues is female, and you're having a talk over tea at work, then you wouldn't be like, oh no, that's a very dangerous thing for me to be doing. And you know what, actually, that's completely wrong. Because that's someone at work, that's someone that you have a general and a genuine interaction with. But then meeting that same person at 10, 11 p.m. in a restaurant, taking her out to dinner, that's a very different interaction. And an individual themselves would be able to feel that, you know what, would people think bad of it? Would it seem good? Is this an example that I want to set? Because remember, the fact is that even if you know what you're doing is right or wrong, people will build an opinion on you based upon what they see. And of course, we don't always do things according to other people's opinion. But nevertheless, there's a saying in Urdu saying, "Bad se bura badnaam," that the person who does something wrong he's not seen as bad as the person that's infamous, who's known for doing that kind of thing. So I think what we need to do is understand that every interaction is slightly different, and the difference comes between when it's an interaction for necessity. So someone's at college and you're in like a group with them, or you're having to discuss something, but you also know where that interaction is happening, how you're speaking to that person, how long you're speaking to that person. So it's kind of like asking how long is a piece of string. But ultimately, the principle and the guideline that is in your head should always be, is what I'm doing right or wrong? Is this the example that I would be setting to my kids? Is this the kind of person that I would want people to see me as? But other than that, it's very hard to make a blanket statement saying when and where exactly you can and cannot meet people.
Sorry, just before I answer, if I'm looking down at my phone, it's not because I'm being rude, it's just because I'm making some notes. Because otherwise I forget the points I'm trying to make. So there's just 2 points I wanted to say. So first of all, as Mansoor Sahib said, that so the Islamic stance is that for professional circumstances, school, college, work, free mixing between the opposite sexes is totally fine. So my wife is a teacher, my mother's a teacher, and we go to college, we go to school, and there's the opposite sexes there. But what Islam doesn't allow is free mixing in social environments. It sees more danger in those circumstances. And the second point I wanted to say is, look, in every circumstance in life, you go to college or school or whatever, you're going to be sat with the opposite sex, and you're not going to put a blanket in front of your face saying, oh, look, I can't sit with you, I can't even look at you, I can't even talk to you. Islam is a religion of ease and moderation. But what is really important is when we talk about parda, or we talk about the hijab, even for men as well, or even for both men and women, even the way we sit, the way we talk, the way we address other people, all these, even your body language, is also a sign of moderation. Is also a sign of moderation in parda. So if you're sat with your legs wide open and your arms wide open, you're really freely chatting to the opposite sex, it can give them, in some instances, an idea that, oh, this guy's really interested in me, or this girl's really interested in me. So in those circumstances, it's important to know your own levels and your own limits, and know that, look, yeah, I'm here for a purpose. I've come to school or college or uni to study. I'm not here for a social. And I do have to work with the opposite sex. That's part and parcel of life. Islam doesn't say you can't work with them in professional circumstances or at college or uni. But it's just about knowing your own boundaries and knowing that you also have the power within yourself to create certain circumstances which can or may not lead to an end result which you may or may not regret.
Jazakallah for that answer. So if we move on now to a kind of completely different question, so a more contemporary of the contemporary issues, I just wanted to discuss the civil unrest that was seen in the US and the UK as well, and many other countries that was linked with racial inequality. So after the killing of George Floyd, we saw the masses rise in the form of the Black Lives Matter movement, and thousands took to the streets to protest. They tore down statues. There was damaging infrastructure as well. So Sabah Sahib, I know you spoke about this as well. So what would be the AMDI perspective on how to combat this inequality? And also, what was beloved Huzur's guidance on this matter? And how can students kind of help further this cause?
So, if you allow, if I give the first half and then you give the second half answer. So the issue of racism and inequality within Islam, the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, said that, it's quite a long narration, but he in essence said that no Arab is above another Arab. No Arab is above a non-Arab. No black person is higher in status or than a white person. And as human beings, we are all equal. And that just sets the whole tone of the conversation, that within Islam, regardless of who you are or where you're from, the color of your skin or what you believe in or the background or your background, everyone is equal. And ultimately, we are all answerable for our own actions, and Allah the Almighty will be the judge of those actions. So in the same breath, no one has a right to take away anybody else's life. The Holy Quran says that to kill an innocent is akin to killing the whole of mankind. And an injustice is an injustice, regardless of who that might be upon. So there have been protests which have taken place across the world. And people have expressed how they feel in more ways than one. And just one piece of guidance which Huzur has given in regards to this is that, yeah, you can go out and take part in protests as long as they are peaceful protests, and then to extract yourself if those protests become violent and in turn affects the makeup of the society, the fabric of society. So that's just part of the answer. Mansoor has more knowledge on further guidance.
Because I think that hits the nail on the head. I think the principle that we have to keep in mind, so again, all of these answers that we give, that Sabah Sahib gives, that I give, or if any other Murabbi gives, or Zindagi gives, or indeed anyone else, the principle that we always have to keep in mind is that Islam works on concepts and guidelines. It very rarely gives you a very direct principle and just says a very direct instruction and says, this is the guideline, that this is the line that you have to toe. Rather, what it does, it gives you a general guideline by which you can understand the goings on in life, and you can make your own rules as you go through. So by make your own rules, Samurad, that it gives you the understanding of Islamic principles and teachings, whereby it informs you of the rule that you need to imply. Now, here in regards to this, we understand that there has been gross injustices across the world of people towards people of different races, most notably, of course, towards people that are black. And this is something which the world cannot and does not deny. And the fact of the matter is that the different processes throughout the world, be they political or otherwise in nature, have discriminated against certain communities for so long that it has naturally led to a buildup of frustration and anger in people. Now, this is something which Islam understands, because right at the beginning, if we talk about the concept of slavery and how the Holy Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was the true emancipator, of how he established not only the freedom for people that were enslaved, but also established the processes and infrastructure to help them achieve the same status as everybody else, if not more than the people around them. In other countries, that did not take place. And that was the first brick in leading up to a huge amount of frustration, which we see today. And there's millions of documentaries and programs and podcasts about this. I'm not going to go into all the details of that now. But when we understand that this is taking place, we understand that there must be a means for people to let out that frustration that's built up inside them. We can't just say, just be quiet and keep it inside yourself, because that's not going to work. And when that has been happening, we see that these little pockets of frustration have been erupting. And that's what's happened in the US and other places as well. And we mentioned George Floyd, but I mean, it's still going on. Just a couple of days ago, or indeed yesterday and the day before, there have been shootings where people have been killed. And again, we see the rise of this almost fiery dragon of anger and violence. The point is that people need a way to express themselves. The pulling down of statues and things, this is basically us, people finding no other person to listen to them. And just as a person, when no one listens to them and shuts them down again and again and again and again, and you think, bro, this is my race you're talking about. This is my existence you're talking about, my culture, my people, my ancestors. When no one listens, then they're going and pulling down these statues. Nobody thinks that pulling down a statue of a slaver or slave trader will result in in equal rights. But it's a venting of their anger and frustration, which we need to understand. So of course, the pulling down of a statue is wrong because it's a criminal act. It's breaking somebody else's property. Regardless of what it means, that's something completely different. But pulling it down is an act which goes against the government. It goes against those in authority. But in the same breath as that, understanding the fact that there is a genuine frustration, the only way in which we can have that voice really heard, and this is what Hazur's guidance was, and this is the guidance of the press office, is to get up and use your democratic right to vote. Get your voice out there. Historically, we've seen that Black and minority ethnic people, they are underrepresented in the media, they're underrepresented in politics, they're underrepresented in all of the main arms and facets of a working society. When that's the case, all you'll have left to do is throw ropes around a statue and pull it down, which we all know will make no difference to how, in the big scheme of things, as to how things work. The only way, sorry, Sabah, I see you jumping in, go on, jump in.
No, sorry, just a quick point based on that of pulling statues and stuff down. You know, when we go outside and we protest and whatever, and Hazur made a very good point that if it's a peaceful protest, that's fine. You go on your own back and you get involved. When it becomes violent and you start damaging people's shops, and I think a lot of people might have seen the video of the horse in central London where the police officer was knocked off and the horse was agitated and ran down the street. When you start attacking animals and you start attacking or you start destroying shops and causing criminal damage, that's an injustice on the person whose property it is. And that's a whole injustice in itself. And the saying that you can't fight fire with fire, very rightly so, you can witness here. And as Mansoor said that, it's important to use your democratic right and talk to those people in power, those who have influence, politicians and so on and so forth, and get your voice heard. Yeah, it might be a long process, but by you going in causing criminal damage and hurting people and animals and property, that in itself is an injustice.
I think another really important point on the back of that is the fact that this is why Hazur isn't saying for Ahmadis not to partake in these protests, or if they, as long as they're peaceful protests. But Hazur is also saying, don't necessarily throw yourself behind every campaign that's out there, because ultimately we are very quick, as I said before, we're very quick to join the herd and to not be, we're very worried of being singled out for what we believe in. But indeed, what you need to do is look at the background of all these campaigns, look at what do they hope to achieve. And this is one thing which I think we're so lucky to have Khilafat, because Khilafat is that thing that tells us something which may go against the grain immediately. And then we see a couple of days, a couple of weeks, a couple of months down the line, that what Hazur said was actually the most foresighted thing and the thing that had the most wisdom behind it. I mean, ultimately, talking about race, it was back in an interview that Hazur gave, and he actually mentioned the fact that if these kind of things like racial tensions are not addressed, we will see the rise of a civil war. And these same words are being used by journalists and media pundits now to describe what's happening. This is why Hazur to us said to the whole community that we should use the hashtag of all lives matter, innocent lives matter, the hashtag of innocent lives matter, because that's what's important. The fact that if a life is innocent, that's itself, regardless of the race or the color or the background, or as Sabah said, the tax bracket or the politics leaning, the fact that you're alive, you have a life, you're a human, that's what makes it valuable. And on top of that, the other hashtag of supremacy of justice. Because once you establish justice in the world, justice is the antithesis of this greed and this violent culture that we see breeding on both sides of the political spectrum. So that's the two things that we need to push. And we see that when we follow the guidance that Hazur has given, the wisdom that he gives, ultimately that lasts for a lot longer than these short-sighted political campaigns that we see coming up every couple of days or every couple of months.
And so just to interject, we keep using the word or the term Hazur or Caliph or Khilafat. So just for those people who don't know what that is, the Ahmadi Muslim community has a system of caliphate and a Caliph who we call Hazur. He is the global leader of Ahmadi Muslims across the world. So just to put that into context, if you say the word Hazur or Caliph or Khilafat, we are referring to that individual who is the global head of the Ahmadi Muslim community, and his name is Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad.
I think it would be remiss of me not to mention here the fact that myself and Sabahuddin Saab, we're both members of the press office of the Ahmadi Muslim community, and our officer in charge, Abid Khan Saab, the press secretary of Hazur, who I believe that the listeners of the AMSA Freshers Week may have heard from, I believe, yesterday. It's very, very important for you to also go out and read one of the recent posts that Abid Saab made, which was actually a speech inspired by the teachings and principles given by Hazrat Khalif Masih, by Hazur, the Caliph of the worldwide Ahmadiyya Muslim community, who actually spoke about this in detail, including the incident of George Floyd and the feelings and the teachings regarding that. And also generally it's a good information just to read Abid Khan Saab's diaries generally, which give you a lot of knowledge as to Hazur's perspective on things. So definitely, please go on the Press Ahmadiyya website and also on the Twitter account. You can find this particular speech. And I think myself and Sabahuddin Saab will also have retweeted it, and you can find it there as well.
Luqman Saab, anything else to add?
I think it was quite interesting, Mansoor Saab, you mentioned Hazur, mentioned the phrase "all innocent lives matter," and it was only as recent as a month ago on the cover story of The Economist. Without going into the politics of the Black Lives Matter and how, unfortunately, it's created two camps in politics. The cover article of The Economist sort of put it that because of this division, I think they said the most successful way to get reforms done is to focus, rather than focus on a particular race, is to focus on all lives. So to try and target and eradicate all sorts of poverty. And these sort of reforms, no one can deny when it comes to politics. So again, it's just highlighting another example of the wisdom of the words of Hazur Khalif Masih. It's just phenomenal as well, just to see that in action.
I think it's important to note here that by us saying all lives matter, I know this has become a contentious thing, because people have said that by saying all lives matter, you diminish the importance of, say, the Black Lives Matter campaign. And that's not what we're saying. We're saying that every race matters, and wherever within that importance of all races, wherever we see a small drop in the importance given to any race, we should be the first there to say, actually, no, this needs to be rectified, which is why Hazur also said that in an individual capacity, Khudam and members of the Youth Association, they are more than welcome to go, and they are permitted to participate in these protests as long as they're peaceful, to register your voice for the fact that there are people out there whose rights are being usurped, and it's up to us to establish a voice for the oppressed, which is, of course, the role of a Muslim. So I think it's a very, very important point, a very valid point there as well.
Jazakallah for those answers. So I'd just like to remind the viewers that we are accepting questions. So if you're listening in on Zoom, please message me. So message me at Bilal Dar, and I will inshallah read those out. And also on Instagram Live, we're also accepting questions. So we have one question from our Instagram Live. The question is, how do I integrate the obligatory prayers in my working life or daily life? So for example, school or student life. It's difficult to take time out in Europe. Working places won't give place to pray and the time.
It's a wicked question. It's a really commonly asked question as well. Also, just before I get into that, I should mention the Abid Saab's article was made by Review of Religions. So if you want to go and look at the article, it's on Review of Religions, also retweeted by us, but the main source is the Review of Religions. Sabah Saab, Luqman Saab, do you want to take this?
I can give my my own anecdote. I think they got on well. So I was at school again. Not at school again. I went to school once. By the grace of God, I managed to pass every year. They didn't repeat any years, thank goodness. But even at primary school, it was me and my parents. We spoke to the head teacher and said, "Look, I'd wish to pray during lunchtime. So is that possible?" And in the beginning, she was like, "Oh yeah, okay. We don't normally. There's no facility for that. But if you wish to pray, then you're more than welcome to bring your own prayer mat, and I can spare 10 minutes in the small room behind my office." And I offered my prayers throughout primary school behind the head teacher's office. Nowadays, a lot of education institutions and workplaces do allow and they facilitate for individuals to practice their faith, whatever faith that might be. I think they give you a quiet room to go and you can go and pray. So I think that point can, that aspect of where can I pray can be answered. And if there's not a place where you can pray, then I'm sure there's a system or a process where you can address the management and raise your concern. I think we live in an age now where everyone is so understanding about people's differences. And I think they're more than happy to cater for your needs. And just taking it from there, I know sometimes we get caught up in the rat race of life. Sometimes we forget that, oh, look, we need to pray and work takes over. And we're human beings, we make mistakes, we're weak individuals, that happens. But when you know that, okay, it's time to pray, just take yourself away and pray in the room where you need to pray in. And if there's no space for you to pray and no facility has been made, then just find a space in the corner, maybe in a communal place when it's quiet, and just sit and just perform your namaz or sat on the chair if need be. Namaz, salat is a key part of Islam. It's one of the 5 pillars of Islam. And it's so important that we make sure we keep performing our namaz, even in circumstances where it might be difficult. It's important to strive to better ourselves as individuals and increase our spirituality and faith and our link with Allah the Almighty. So yeah, times get tough, we get taken away, we are blown away with the wind of life, and we might forget. And if you do forget, then when you do remember, it's really important to offer your prayers at that time before it's too late and the next prayer time starts. But yeah, salat and namaz is a key part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember once, first of all, we should start off with the fact that everyone has their weaknesses, and the fact that someone's asking this question shows that they're trying to be better. And don't get us wrong, every single person, I would say I mean, other than people like Hazur and the saints, every single person struggles with all of the principles in Islam. It's a continuous strain and a continuous battle to defeat your inner demons. That's what they say. That's what they say the real jihad is, right? The bigger jihad is the jihad within yourself. And that's the jihad to overcome your natural tendencies and to try and become a better person. When you wake up in the morning and you've put the alarm on, that feeling of, it's just 5 minutes more. And then that 5 minutes ends up in you missing Fajr. Everyone gets that kind of a feeling. It's a natural thing. There's no angel sitting next to the beds of anyone just saying, oh, come on, wake up for namaz, wake up for namaz. We all have that struggle. So that's the first thing. Don't ever think that you're the only one going through this. Everyone's on that uphill battle. I mean, the fact is that everyone's spirituality goes up and down. Even Hazrat Abu Bakr, when he went to the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Holy Prophet basically taught him about hypocrisy and about who hypocrites are, right? And Hazrat Abu Bakr went away very, very parishan. He came back and he said to the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, I think I'm a hypocrite. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, why would you say that? He said that because when I'm with you, my spirituality is proper high. He didn't say those words, but you know. And then when I go away, my spirituality dips again. And therefore that makes me a hypocrite. And he said, this is the case with everyone. The fact is that we all have highs and lows, but it's that want to be better. Look, the relationship with Allah is just like a relationship with anybody else. Someone told me this once, that it's like having a conversation with somebody only when you need something. What kind of a conversation, what kind of relationship would that be? Whenever you're in fear or in grief or upset about something, or you're praying for something, if at that point you're like, now I need to do proper namaz, that's like when you need something, you call a friend. But when he needs you, or when you don't need something from him, like salo saal ke liye baat nahi ki, you haven't called him for weeks or months or years. The same case is with God. That why is it only that when we need something or when we're in pain or grief, we turn to Allah properly? Otherwise, if we maintain that relationship with God on a regular basis, then God is already there. You don't even need to go out of the way to talk to him. He's still already there. So you got those two principles. One is the fact that try to make that relationship with God so much that he becomes like your friend. I mean, we read in the Bible that God would walk with some of the prophets. He would walk beside them. What does that even mean? It means that they remembered God so much, that zikr ilahi, that remembrance of Allah was so much that he became like their friend. Like how we have our mates in our pockets, that you know there's a person that you can call that will always pick up your call. You can rely on that person. And that same way, how we rely on people, that's the same reliance that we need to have on God. And the only way we can do that is by maximizing how much we speak to him. And also, not just the 5 daily prayers. In those 5 daily prayers, make time for dua. Like, it's not just about reciting the Arabic and knowing the translation. That's important. But you know those times when like you're in sajda and you really start to speak to Allah and you try to get your emotions across and you feel like there's someone listening on the other side. That's the kind of relationship that you need to have and that you want to urge to have. And as long as you have the urge to have that, then you'll be okay. Slip and fall, sometimes you're human. We're all human. We all make mistakes. But as long as you have that urge that Allah, I really want to be with you, then it will pull you through. And Allah will pull you through. And that's the most important thing, I think.
Sorry, just to add on there. I had a conversation with my wife a few weeks ago, and I was like, oh, John, you know what? It's not easy like to keep hold of your faith, and sometimes you forget to pray and whatever. And we had this conversation that if you turn and you seek and you stay in the right of Allah the Almighty, of course, He will help you in every way, shape, and form. And I think it's important to remember that He is the source of goodness. And as human beings, we are loved by Allah the Almighty. And the Holy Quran says that God has made man weak, and as Mansoor said. And the reason why I keep saying, oh, God has made man weak and we are weak individuals, because it's true. We have those ups and downs. But if we prioritize our faith, there's no reason why Allah the Almighty won't help us through our struggles on a day-to-day basis.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think what a teacher in Jamia once said that there's two, it might have been a teacher, it might have been Asif Basit Sahab from MTA. I can't remember, but I'll ascribe it to Asif Basit Sahab because he deserves the praise anyway. He said that there are two types of people in the world. The first are those who mold their lives around their religion, And the second type of people are those who mold their religion around their lives. So the question, of course, was about the 5 daily prayers. And of course, at times it can become difficult to put it in, as it were. But that's what it shouldn't be. You shouldn't be putting in the prayers in your day to day. You should be trying to mold your day to day around your prayers. And of course, if it's impossible to do, then Allah has put so many sahulat and what's the word for that? Means of ease within your day that you can move the timing of the prayer. Everyone has a break time, everyone has a lunch time, but it's about prioritizing. It's like saying, do you know what? I was going bowling today or playing golf with the lads today, and I just couldn't find the time for prayers. That's a matter of priority. That's not a matter of time. Everyone in their life has 24 hours in their day. And it's up to us to make sure that those 5 moments, I mean, none of us put our sleep away or put our food away, but just as we make time for those specific things, saying this is concrete, everything else can move, but this can't move. If we put that priority on prayer, it makes things a lot easier. And I'm not saying that I'm able to do it 24/7 either. I don't think anyone is, but it's about that endeavor to try your best to make that happen. And that's what it means to be a Muslim. That's what it means to go. As a Muslim, I'd say, sorry, I talk a lot, I blabber a lot, please forgive me. That as a Muslim, I'd said, talking about a believer, that being a Mormon, being a believer is like going up a mountain. And going up a mountain is arduous, it's strenuous. And he said that if at any moment you feel that things are getting easy, it probably means you're going the wrong way. So if you're a true believer, it's a struggle, it's an endeavor, and you should feel that sweat and that hard work. So we're all in the same boat together trying to get to the top. So don't lose hope.
Jazakallah for those answers. So we had another question kind of related to this. So is that what should be the general practice of Ahmadi students trying to pray in the general university prayer room? Should we read in the corner whilst congregation is happening, or should we avoid reading namaz at the same time as the non-Ahmadis?
I think it's a matter directly pertaining to students, so we should pass this one on to Luqman Sahib for sure.
I guess it's all about using hikmat as well. So if you go into the prayer room when they're in congregation, it has the potential to cause disruption or even offense to them. So you don't openly want to do that. You don't intentionally want to do that. If it can be avoided, it should be done. But I don't think we should have an inferiority complex over this issue as well. I think this is one of those things that, if you're put in that situation where they ask, why did you not pray with us? I think we should be very clear. And I think this question came up earlier this week as well. We should give our stance, explain the reason why it is we can't pray behind someone else. And in that situation, like I've come across it, I know others have come across it, they understand, they tend to understand this issue. But I think it is using hikmat. I don't think it's you want to intentionally cause an issue or even potentially cause an offense to do it. I guess slightly related to the previous question as well, I think you often find that, the facilities in this country, even though it's not a predominantly Muslim country, it's actually, when you think about it, and it's actually phenomenal that, in most universities and even in schools now and most office places, you do have these facilities of a multi-faith room. And these facilities aren't that, you've got such a short time in which you can use it. You've got such a wide range, you've got such a wide range of doing it. But going back to the original answer, like I said, I don't think you should necessarily try and cause offense or anything. If you're in a situation like prayers going on, you need to say your prayers, then obviously, you will perform your prayers, right? If your lectures are starting when you need to get back to work, then you try and do it in a way that doesn't cause disruption to them or that they might cause disruption to you. Don't ever fear the situation of like when they ask you, why did you not pray with us? Answer with confidence as well why it is, because this is a matter of faith. But other than that, the prayer room is there for everyone to use. So use it in obviously in a proper manner. but you're free to use it. You know, don't feel it's the property of anyone else.
Mm.
You know, in these situations, the prayer room is provided. In these situations, often it's a multi-faith room, so it belongs to other religions. So in my actually in my workplace, we actually have Jews who use the multi-faith room. We actually have Hindus as well who use it. So it truly is a multi-faith room. It's really beautiful that you have that as well. And I've been in a situation where I've had a Hindu gentleman, even a Jewish gentleman, who sort of said, "Do you mind if I continue my prayer while you do your prayer?" And I said, it doesn't bother me, and he was happy to. And we were both praying in our own way in this multi-faith room, which wasn't too big as well. So it was a very sort of nice experience that we're doing that. You know, it's promoting peace, it's respecting everybody's rights. So I think that's the key points that I would add on this.
I think, yeah, that's really nice. I remember, so I went to uni at Kingston. So I went to Kingston Uni. Now, anyone that knows anything about universities, or especially Kingston University, will know that they've got one of the biggest and most active Islamic societies. And they call it the multi-faith room, but it's a mosque, right? There's always Qurans there, there's always Janamazah there, there's always someone seemingly sitting at the gaf, because whenever I went in, he was seeming to be there. Like, I didn't know when he went to his lectures. And I remember one time I went in there, and they started to notice basically that this guy would basically turn up just as the namaz was finishing. And eventually it became quite apparent. And like I had people come up to me saying that you're that Qadiani, aren't you? I'm like, I'm not a Qadiani. I'm an Ahmedi. That whole conversation that everyone has. But it got to a stage where, because I was as regular as they were, there became like a mutual respect kind of thing, that he's coming to do namaz. Because they knew that of their like 200 people strong Islamic society, like 3 were coming to namaz regularly. And yet they saw this quote unquote Qadiani turning up every time for namaz. And if it was, if I sat there and read like a little bit of Quran, if I had like a spare lecture or something, then it builds a respect. But again, like Luqman Sahib said, say it with your chest, like say it with pride, because ultimately, if Allah was standing there, you wouldn't be shy in saying that I am here believing in the promised Messiah. You'd say it with your chest, like, these boys, they don't agree with me, but I know that Hazrat Masih Maud is true. I know that my ancestors and the ancestors of my friends have been shot, they've been killed, they've given up their lives for this. And for me to stand here and be afraid of you right now, who are you? And it always reminds me of that time when the Holy Prophet ﷺ and Hazrat Abu Bakr were in that cave, and the opponents were right outside, and they didn't know what they would do, but Holy Prophet ﷺ turned around to Hazrat Abu Bakr and said, La tahzan inna Allaha ma'ana. Don't be afraid, God is with us. And at that time, never feel that you're alone. Have that strength, have that faith. And remember just how many tens of millions of us there are in the world. And at that moment in time, we're all with you. Say it with your chest. And on the other side of things, on the flip, I remember a few of us went, I don't know where it was. I think it was a missionaries meeting, a field missionaries meeting somewhere in the UK. I can't remember where it was. I remember we flew there though. I think it was I think it might have been to Scotland or somewhere else, maybe else. Maybe we went to Germany or something. And in the aeroplane, we got off the aeroplane, and it was a few of us and Naseem Bajo Sahib, who coincidentally is my mamu as well. And I still remember he's known as Mr. Tabligh. And we always joke that he has like one of those long trench coats, and you open it up and it has like all the bed forms hidden inside the coat. But it was interesting because when we got to the airport, he made time for namaz. And not just like, let's sit on these chairs and do namaz. He said, no, let's make the effort and find the prayer room, and we'll all go and do namaz ba jamaat. And it's like in between 2 connecting flights. So we didn't have that much time. We're like, Mamu, okay, let's all go. And we went into this prayer room, and the tables were reversed because there was a non-Ahmadi doing namaz there. And there was like 20 like British imams coming in and just basically starting their namaz here. And afterwards, Bajo Sahib, without any hesitation, approached him. And he said that we are from the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. Here's some literature. And I was like, okay, that's the last person you'd give literature to. And it ended up in them sitting down for about half an hour discussing the coming of the Mahdi. Because actually the people that you are appealing to, if they haven't been poisoned by this anti-Ahmadi rhetoric, they're the ones that are wanting to appease God, and they want to please God the most. And sometimes they are the most susceptible and the most accepting of the message of his Messiah to have come. So don't think that everyone's standing in the mosque, if they're not an Ahmadi, if they're not Qadiani, they're fanatics and they're going to attack you. Actually, you might find some of the most pious souls there who can join Ahmadiyyat. You never know. So it's an opportunity rather than a threat.
I have to ask, did you make your connecting flight?
We did, just about. We'll be by the power of prayer.
We have another question from our Instagram live, which is, how can we refrain from indulging in materialism? So I think we have to kind of unpack what materialism is first, and then how we can refrain from it.
Sabah, I think we're great for this.
I won't go that far. Again, it's just my own 2 pence worth of an answer. You know, that I am personally a fanatic for cars, and I have been since I've been 12 years old, and I still love to hear the roar of an engine of a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, and I'll admit that now. And before I went to Jamia, before I went to the seminary of the community to become an imam, I was aiming and striving to achieve and earn loads of money and drive a Lamborghini and whatever, and that was my aim in life, my goal in life. Anyway, I then went to the seminary of the community to study to become an imam, as did respected Mansoor Clarke Sahib. I studied there for 7 years. And during those 7 years, and actually even my dad says this to me now, that life is very short, and the only thing you're taking up to the next life with you are your deeds. Your villas, your 6 figures in your bank account, if you're that wealthy.
Villas, yeah.
Plural. Your jets, your whatever kind of materialism you have, your wealth, your assets, whatever, they're all staying here. And the only thing you're taking with you are your good deeds. You know, Islam says that you cannot fulfill God's rights until you fulfill the rights of His creation. So looking after His creation, being kind to your neighbors, asking them how they are, keeping the ties of kinship, these things are good deeds. I'm not saying don't drive an Audi or Ferrari or whatever. That's fine. You can do that. But just as long as you're fulfilling your Islamic duties, that's really important. And if you feel like you're ticking all those boxes, then it's fine to have those luxuries in life, because no one stopped you from having that. In the time of the Holy Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace and blessings of God be upon him, there was a time where his companions had red camels, and they were like the Ferraris of this day and age. They were the creme de la creme of wealth. So they had those things, but they were also fulfilling their rights to God and His creation. So I think materialism is okay, just as long as it's not your focal point, and your focal point is serving humanity and fulfilling their rights to God.
I think on that, I think Sabah has nailed it. It always reminds me of what Sabah just said about leaving and only your deeds go with you. I think it always reminds me of the death of Alexander the Great. And I think for me and for many other people, he's left behind such a lesson that, you know, people often say that, oh, only those people that aren't interested in money are those people that don't have it. But that's actually not true at all. Alexander the Great, basically, after conquering everything, you can go and read out, this is not a history lesson, you can go and read about it yourself, but basically when he died, after conquering so many lands and attaining so much power and wealth, he, on his deathbed, said, I want 3 wishes to be fulfilled of mine. I want you to do 3 things when I die. The first is, I want the physicians, so the doctors, to carry my coffin. And the reason why he said that was, he said that I want everyone to know that no matter how good the physicians are, how good the doctors are, death will come. So remember the impermanence of life, the fact that your life, doesn't matter if you're 60, 70, 80, 90, 150, you're going to die. So remember that and live your life according to that. Number 2, he said that as my coffin goes, I want you to take all of my gold and silver and possessions and silks and treasures and throw them on the path behind me, to scatter them as I go. Because I want you to know that everything that I earned, I can't take it with me in my coffin. It stays here. And number 3, he said, I want you, as you take my coffin, I want you to have my hands hanging out of the sides of my coffin. Because I want the world to see that everything that these hands clasped onto during my life, at the end of the day, they're empty when I go to my grave. I don't get to take anything with me. And for me, that's such a powerful message. And along with that, another thing that happened to do with the grave was a hadith of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he said, and this is one of my favorite, it gives me chills when I think about it. I think it will do the same to you. He said that nothing fills the mouth of a man other than the dirt of his own grave. Wow. Nothing fills the mouth of a man other than the dirt of his own grave. That we're always hungry for more. We always want more money. We always want more food, a better house, a faster car, a better suit. We always want more. It's only when our mouths get stuffed with the dirt that we have to eat in death that we realize that nothing gets rid of that hunger. Nothing satiates that hunger. It only stops when we die. So the hands of Alexander the Great and the hadiths of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that should be enough to make you realize you could die tomorrow. Sabah and I both attended a socially distanced funeral a week ago of a family member that died. And it brought home the fact that when we were putting dirt on the grave, it brings home the fact that it doesn't matter what you do when you're alive. At the end of the time, at the end of the day, when you're dead, you still fit into that little cardboard box, that little wooden coffin of yours, and you're buried the same as everyone else under the grass in the dirt. That's it.
Sorry, just to add on that point, I think Mansoor made a really good point. But when you are buried, the only thing that people have memories of you are the things you've done in your life.
Yeah.
And it's not the Lamborghinis or the Range Rovers or the Audis or the Mercedes that you used to drive. It was the way you treated people and the way you showed compassion and mercy and love towards people. And they're the things that you remembered for.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I guess from my side, just to add one more thing is, and again, this is something that's always reminded us time and time again, is if you do perform your 5 daily prayers regularly on time, and you are, going to the mosque when you can, if you really analyze yourself, if you look at yourself, and I do this with myself as well, the times where I find that I'm weak are the times where perhaps I'm not going to the mosque for my prayers, or I'm being a little bit lax about my prayers. And then immediately that's a signal to me that I need to correct that. And when I analyze myself, that when I am regular in my prayers, when I'm going to the mosque, making that effort, then I'm automatically spiritually stronger, and it protects me from wanting to indulge in materialism to the extent that it shouldn't be done. So it's a literal, the prophecy that that praying 5 times a day is really, you are purifying your soul. You can actually see that come true, and I do challenge you that analyze yourself. Is that the case? If you do pray regularly 5 times a day, if you do go to the mosque or pray in congregation every opportunity you can, and compare that to the times of your life where you weren't perhaps as strong at that. You'll see that this is the best medicine. This is the best medicine to guard against this.
Absolutely.
Sorry, if you permit, just one thing. Once I've said, sometimes your spirituality might be low, and you go to the mosque for that to be re-energized. Sometimes we're not always able to go to the mosque, and sometimes it's not possible to do so. I think it's really important to use the means which we have to the best of our ability to try and keep our spirituality at a level which we're happy at. Which we're happy with. So whether you're watching the Friday sermon, which the Caliph delivers, or you're tuning into the programs which are broadcast on our channel, on our TV channel, MTA International Muslim Television Ahmadiyya, which is on Sky 731, or you're just tapping into Instagram or YouTube or whatever, just to get a dose of spirituality, just to maybe relight and ignite that fire, go and use those things, because I think we do get caught up in the rat race of life, and sometimes our Instagram feeds, our reels are just filled with things which are sometimes unachievable. But if you do maybe look for those things which can maybe re-energize you and boost you and charge your batteries and charge your spirituality, it's really important to have that regular dose to keep you going through difficult times.
Jazakallah. I'm wary of the time. It's now getting Maghrib time. So we will just wrap it up there. So Jazakallah Sabah Sahab and Mansoor Clarke Sahab and Luqman Sahab for taking time out of your day and being with us here today. Jazakallah for answering the questions.